the domain. So this balance between the private and public sector is one of the areas of interest for us.
Dr. Robert, tell us more about the culture, in Asia right now, especially in Singapore. What's happening with the performing arts scene? I mean, are there really a lot of opportunities for Asians to ever express themselves in the international arena? Can they be recognized?
That's okay. I think we've got to go a little slower there. What's happening is that there are increased number of opportunities in Singapore, and there's also an increased field worldwide. But as talents and opportunities go, things cannot just happen overnight. What we're seeing here in Singapore is that essentially the government has doubled the funding for the arts. So something will come out of that in the next 15 years or so. Now, in terms of performing opportunities and making a success out of Broadway or being someone internationally recognizable, those things take some time to come about, and they don't come about just because of pure talent. As you know, situations arise and suddenly names come to the forefront, not out of talent alone, but because of opportunities and because of circumstances. So those are the things that we are surreptitious, and we need to wait for those things to happen. We can't make those things happen.
Well, you mentioned you can't make those things happen. Is it due to the fact that the market in Singapore and Asia itself, they're still immature to some degree of recognizing that the arts itself can be profitable?
Not totally that, because while we're here in Singapore, we're forgetting that the situation in London and New York is exactly the same. They're trying to make more things happen, but you have to wait for everything suddenly to combust, and it doesn't happen there either. So if it doesn't happen there, it's not going to happen here. It's just in the nature of the arts. It takes talent and some kind of a public imagination that fits in with the talent at that given moment in time. We certainly do recognize that there are opportunities aplenty here, and it's grown tremendously in the last 10, 15 years.
Yes. So what kind of surprises can the audience expect from Live Singapore 2011? Because everyone has seen that Singapore has bloomed so much, especially Esplanade is so lively, and now you have the 2 IRs been created, and now they're experiencing a lot of attraction. Could you tell us more?
Sure. I think for Live Singapore, it's always an extremely exciting event, because having the brains and the talent worldwide to come here, for 2 or 3 days, is just a fantastic opportunity. And this year, there's a component called Unplugged, and the Unplugged component allows face-to-face interaction between artist management and artists and the public. And when you put people with a lot of creativity on the same table and allow them to freely discuss their ideas without a fixed agenda, surprises do come out. I can't guarantee they'll all be life-changing surprises, but for sure there will be revelations. Even last year, when things were very gloomy for American orchestras, and orchestras are starting to go bankrupt in America, we had Zarin Mehta here, and the first thing he said was, "We're very optimistic. New York Philharmonic is not going to go bankrupt, and it's actually going to be sustained." So those things happen when we have all the great leaders and thinkers coming at the same table. on our own, we're imagining things to be really difficult and full of challenges. But when we have the leaders here, they share their optimism, and they have a positive looking spirit that somehow filters down to the very public in Singapore.
So would there be some high-profile leaders from New York and as well as from UK coming to Singapore?
From worldwide, yes. It's very rare to have these personalities come here. I think we have Richard Evans from the Sydney Opera House, and Richard I've known for many years. He used to be with Australian Ballet, and a person who's a dancer, and then now the general manager of such a leading institution like Sydney Opera House. With all the attendance challenges, Sydney Opera House, the inside of Sydney Opera House is nowhere as attractive. Sorry, Richard, as Esplanade. It's only because they've been built such a long time ago. They're not purpose designed with world-class acoustics in mind. The outside is very iconic, but the artists don't care about that, they care about the inside. So they have challenges, and we have challenges as well. And there's nothing like putting together all our problems and seeing how they're solved. But just to answer your question a little further, I believe that the head of the Goethe Institute, which is like the equivalent of the Arts Council from Germany, will be here as well. And Andrew Kay, who works both, who used to work in the classical theatre field, is now like a pop promoter. So someone who has his expertise in very diverse areas like that contributes a lot to the discussion.
So do you think the outlook of the future and the entertainment of the performing arts in Singapore will be more optimistic in the next 5 years?
Oh, it will be more optimistic in the next 15 years. As I said, the funding was doubled to $365 million
per year.
Per year. That's about $1 million a day. So that's a hefty amount, and I think that takes place over the next 15-year period.
So are you confident that there will be more artists, or should I say more musicals that will be manufactured here in Singapore?
I'll say that the fundamentals are there. In other words, the leadership and the concern and the funding is getting in place. Now we have to make sure that the funding is used in a way that talent is actually generated in a way that the public can consume. So in other words, just by throwing money into the arts, that's not going to work. By putting money into the arts in very carefully placed incentive initiatives, that has more of a chance to work. But again, I need to always emphasize that just by building blocks, that doesn't make Broadway, and it doesn't make a performing star.
So, are you saying that it is not just by investing money into talent?
Yes. There's a certain degree of creativity required, like creative leadership. How does the money just go into productions? Does it go into higher artistic direction, or actors, or a mixture? And in what mixture? And is the funding long-term, short-term? There are many decisions to make. What kind of productions are we going to go into? Are we going to compete with Broadway? Are we going to make an Eastern identity? Do we capitalize on maybe a Western director to direct Eastern talent? There are many choices, and each series of choices can be managed by sort of an artistic manager or a producer or director, or a combination of all three. And those are the things that I think Live Singapore is addressing, because exactly now we have the money, or we've been promised the money. How are we going to make use of it in the best way?
Do you think that Asia and even Singapore are they really capable of producing viable and world-class theatre and classical acts or even performing arts?
Well, I think we'll put it this way. At this point in time, countries in Europe and I believe in Australia as well, and especially in America, have actually scaled back on their funding for the arts. I think we are the only one of the few cities that's actually not only increasing but doubling. So we are in a much better position now than we've ever been before.
So why do you think that, or is Singapore still dependent on foreign acts, and why?
No, actually, there are two parts to that question. Singaporeans will always like to see foreign acts, just like the English will always like to see foreign acts in Europe and Asia. I mean, it's just interesting to see performance from another country. You know, it doesn't matter where you live; you like to see guest performance from another country. But there's a second part, which is that quite often people tell me that the foreigners take over the limelight, but that's not really true, because if you look at the Singaporean productions, they have very long runs and they have very substantial audiences, and they use the venues and production values in a very much same way as the foreign productions do. So while the foreign productions come here and perform for an average of 2 or 3 shows, the local productions actually run for 2 or 3 weeks. So on the balance, there's as much, if not more, local productions than foreign ones. It's just that foreign ones tend to have a higher visibility only because, you know, as I say, they're exotic. They come as a visitor for a day or so. Of course, we command greater attention from a homegrown theatre's existence every day here.
So, do you think that Live Singapore is able to provide a platform for talents like Singapore, Korea, Malaysia to be marketed internationally?
Well, there is a showcase component in Live Singapore, and that's one of those critical areas where managers from abroad can actually look at talent here. But I think the showcase itself is only a tip of the iceberg. You know, the fact that management from other countries have come here establishes a kind of a highway for exchange. Quite often, local performers ask me, you know, how come I'm always bringing in foreign talent, but I'm not exporting it? Well, there's very easy questions there, because I live in Singapore, I do that. Whereas my counterpart who lives in London or New York, they are specialized in importing talent for New York and London. So by opening that pathway now that they're going to be here for Live Singapore, but by opening that exchange, they now see that, wow, there is a conduit that is actually flowing two-way. So there are opportunities. I think that the fact that arts administrators come to Singapore and they only see a few artists in the showcase, but straight away they realize that there's a potential beyond the showcase that they don't need to see in person. Obviously, in a span of two or 3 days, in a span of a few minutes of showcase, you can only see a minute amount, but they would know that there's more out there.
What kind of trends do you see right now within the music scene and the performing arts here in Singapore and Asia? Are we moving towards jazz or blues or fusion of different sorts?
That's a very interesting question. In reality, I think we're actually moving towards many things that hitherto had such a small audience that they were niche and unimportant. In other words, the niche areas have developed now into almost consumer-sized critical mass type things. For example, world music used to be a tiny component of the pop music scene, but world music has grown so much. If you look at the success of the Mosaic Festival, you see that world music is a huge following. And other niche things, bossa novas, being a very tiny part of the market, now has a substantial following. Classical music, while it had stagnated for a long while, I think is getting a breakthrough because classical music managers have been straddled with all sorts of unbelievable problems for the last 10 years, and being straddled with so many problems sometimes make you creative as well. So there are new audience development initiatives, the way of playing the music and the way of interacting with the audience, are ways where new audiences are won. So in answer to your question, we are actually moving in all directions, and there's a very good reason for that, because as we become more and more discerning in our own taste, audiences believe that they like to pursue their own taste, and now they are allowed to, because there's the choice. They don't need just to go to classical music or Lady Gaga. Everything in between is there and well presented, well publicized. So they have a choice of pursuing their own personal interests.
So tell me, what is Live Singapore? That will be the last question, I think, for the day. What is Live Singapore? Because Live Singapore came about just only last year, and this is the second year in the running.
Well, Live Singapore is such a unique idea that I think it will take more than a year for the significance to sink in. Really, I think last year's event was so groundbreaking that after all the celebrities have left, we're still wondering, wow, did it actually happen here? The world's strongest voices and the most articulate managers were here, and they've all seen Singapore for the first time, and they've taken away ideas with them, and they've given us ideas plenty to think about. So having that kind of a platform for intellectual exchange, and having artists on the same table and audiences also as participants, I think that's very unique. We don't see that elsewhere in the world. We do see a lot of arts markets around the world. Japan has an arts market, and Taiwan has one, Korea has one, and Australia has one, and they've been running for many, many years. Sometimes I think we're a little tired of arts markets, because we go to so many of them, and it's sort of a little, to put it crudely, sometimes they're described as meat markets, because there's so much to sell. But here, having an opportunity for artists to sell themselves, but also having the kind of input from management, that's a unique situation, and I think that's what Live Singapore is all about.
Well, thank you, Dr. Robert, for your time and your comments on the upcoming Live Singapore, and we look forward to seeing you more often during that convention.
Thank you.
Welcome.